Hare Krishna.
So it's Canto 2, Chapter 6, Verse 17. Chapters Purusha Shukta confirmed, and the invocation thus.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So, verse 17. The sun illuminates both internally and externally by expanding its radiation. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by expanding his universal form, maintains everything in the creation, both internally and externally. The universal form of the Lord, or the impersonal feature of the Lord, known as the Brahma Jyoti, is clearly explained here and compared to the radiation of the sun. The sunshine may expand all over the universe, but the source of the shine, namely the sun planet or the deity known as Surya Narayan, is the basis of such radiation. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, is the basis of the impersonal Brahma Jyoti radiation, or the impersonal feature of the Lord. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 14:27. So the universal form of the Lord is the secondary imagination of the impersonal form of the Lord, but the primary form of the Lord is Shyam Sundar, with two hands playing on his eternal flute. 75% of the expansive radiation of the Lord is manifested in the spiritual sky, Tripad Vibhuti, and 25% of his personal radiation comprehends the entire expansion of the material universes. Wow. This is also explained and stated in the Bhagavad Gita 10.42. Thus, the 75% expansion of his radiation is called his internal energy, whereas the 25% expansion is called the external energy of the Lord. The living entities who are residents of the spiritual as well as the material expansions are his marginal energy, Tatashta Shakti, and they are at liberty to live in either of the energies, external or internal. Those who live within the spiritual expansion of the Lord are called liberated souls, whereas the residents of the external expansion are called the conditioned souls. We can just make an estimate of the number of the residents of the internal expansions in comparison with the number of residents in the external energy, and it may easily conclude that the liberated souls are far more numerous than the conditioned souls.
So what did you get from that?
I got that Krishna Brahma Jyoti radiation, 75% of it illuminates the spiritual world, and 25% illuminates all the material universes.
Yes, very nice. And that there are more liberated souls than there are conditioned souls. Although living in the material world, we think that there are only a few liberated souls and most of the souls are conditioned, which in one sense is true in the material world, but not in the spiritual world. Or in the whole, more people are liberated than they are conditioned. So
good to hear.
Yeah, it's nice. Okay, so we'll continue reading. Text 18. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the controller of immortality and fearlessness, and he is transcendental to death and the fruitive actions of the material world. O Narada, O Brahmana, it is therefore difficult to measure the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. The glories of the Lord and the transcendental 75% of the Lord's internal potency are stated in the Padma Purana, Uttarakhand. It is said there that those planets in the spiritual sky, which comprises the 75% expansion of the internal potency of the Lord, are far, far greater than those planets in the total universes composed of the external potency of the Lord. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the total universes in the external potency of the Lord are compared to a bucket full of mustard seeds. One mustard seed is calculated to be a universe itself. In one of the universes in which we are now living, the number of planets cannot be counted by human energy, and so how can we think of the sum total in all the universes, which are compared to a bucket full of mustard seeds? And the planets in the spiritual sky are at least 3 times the number of those in the material sky. Such planets, being spiritual, are in fact transcendental to the material modes. Therefore, they are constituted in the modes of unalloyed goodness only. The conception of spiritual bliss, Brahmananda, is fully present in those planets. Each of them is eternal, indestructible, and free from all kinds of limitations experienced in the material world. Each of them is self-illuminating and more powerfully dazzling than, if we can imagine, the total sunshine of millions of mundane suns. The inhabitants of those planets are liberated from birth, death, old age, and diseases, and have full knowledge of everything. They are all godly and free from all sorts of material hankerings. They have nothing to do there except to render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord Narayan, who is the predominating deity of such Vaikuntha planets. Those liberated souls are engaged incessantly in singing songs mentioned in the Samaveda. Veda Sangha Parakramo Panashaider Gayanti Yam Samagaha. All of them are personifications of the 5 Upanishads. Tripad Vibhuti, or the 75% known as the internal potency of the Lord, is to be understood as the kingdom of God, far beyond the material sky. And when we speak of Pada Vibhuti, or the 25% comprising his external energy, we should understand that this refers to the sphere of the material world. It is also said, that means that's where we are in the material world, unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you want to look at it. It is also said in the Padma Purana, the kingdom of Tripad Vibhuti is transcendental, whereas the Pada Vibhuti, which is where we are, is mundane. Tripad Vibhuti is eternal, whereas the Pada Vibhuti is transient. I think we can all experience that.
Yours says Pada Vibhuti?
Yeah.
Mine says Ekapada Vibhuti.
Would make more sense.
Alright, that's a new paragraph. The Lord and his eternal servitors in the transcendental kingdom all have eternal forms which are auspicious, infallible, spiritual, and eternally youthful. In other words, there is no birth, death, old age, and disease. That eternal land is full of transcendental enjoyment and full of beauty and bliss. This very fact is corroborated in this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, and the transcendental nature is described as Amrita. As described in the Vedas, Ut Amrit Tad Vashyesana, the Supreme Lord is the Lord of immortality, or in other words, the Lord is immortal, and because he is the Lord of immortality, he can award immortality to his devotees. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 8.16, the Bhagavad Gita 8.16, the Lord assures that whoever may go to his abode of immortality shall never return to this mortal land of threefold miseries. The Lord is not like a mundane Lord. A mundane master or Lord never allows his subordinates to equally enjoy with him, nor is he a mundane Lord immortal, nor can he award immortality to his subordinates. The Supreme Lord, who is the leader of all living entities, can award all the qualities of his personality unto his devotees, including immortality and spiritual bliss. In the material world, there is always anxiety or fearfulness in the hearts of all living entities. But the Lord, being himself the supreme fearless, also awards the same quality of fearlessness to his pure devotees.
Yeah.
Mundane existence is itself a kind of fear, because in all mundane bodies the effects of birth, death, old age and disease always keep a living being compact in fear.
Ain't it the truth, brother?
So true. In the mundane world, there is always the influence of time, which changes things from one stage to another, and the living entity, originally being avikara or unchangeable, suffers a great deal on account of changes due to the influence of time. It's so true.
Mm-hmm. So many changes happen over time, and we're all just got to deal with them.
The changing effects of eternal time are conspicuously absent in the immortal kingdom of God, which should therefore be understood to have no influence of time, and therefore no fear whatsoever.
So basically, in the transcendental realm, in the spiritual sky, there is the absence of time. So there is no time. So therefore, one is not fearful because of what time brings or what time, the causes and the effects that time has on us here in the material world, which is basically birth, death, disease, and old age. And then, of course, things just changing whether we like it or not. So in the spiritual world, these things are absent because time is conspicuous by its absence. So you don't notice time. Just like here in the material world, when we're having a good time, they say time flies when you're having fun, then we don't experience the passage of time in the same way. So time, in one sense, even here in the material world, is relative. But in the spiritual world, it's completely conspicuous by its absence. It means you're like, oh, what time is it? Who cares what time it is? It's right now, and we're always experiencing that. So it's kind of a completely different experience. Excuse me. Was that the end of the paragraph?
Yeah.
Where were you?
In the material world, that's where it begins.
Yeah. In the material world, so-called happiness is the result of one's own work. One can become a rich man by dint of one's own hard labor, and there are always fear and doubts as to the duration of such acquired happiness. But in the kingdom of God, no one has to endeavor to attain a standard of happiness. Happiness is the nature of the spirit, as is stated in the Vedanta Sutras, Anandamayo Vyasat. The spirit is by nature full of happiness. Happiness in spiritual nature always increases in volume with a new phase of appreciation. There is no question of decreasing the bliss. Such unalloyed spiritual bliss is nowhere to be found within the orbit of the material universe, including the Janaloka planets, or, for that matter, the Maharloka or Satyaloka planets, because even Lord Brahma is subject to the laws of fruitive actions and the law of birth and death. It is therefore stated here, Duratyaya, or in other words, spiritual happiness in the eternal kingdom of God cannot be imagined, even by the great brahmacharis or sannyasis who are eligible to be promoted to the planets beyond the region of heaven. Or, the greatness of the Supreme Lord is so great that it cannot be imagined even by the great brahmacharis or sannyasis, but such happiness is factually attained by the unalloyed devotees of the Lord by His Divine Grace. There you go.
Text 19.
Does that all make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead is to be known as the supreme reservoir of all material opulences, which constitute the 1/4 of his energy, in which all the conditioned living entities exist. Deathlessness, fearlessness, and freedom from the anxieties of old age and disease exist in the kingdom of God, which is beyond the 3 higher planetary systems and beyond the material coverings. Out of the total manifestations of the Sandini energy of the Lord, 1/4 is displayed in the material world, and 3/4 are displayed in the spiritual world. The Lord's energy is divided into 3 component parts, namely Sandini, Samvit, and Ladini. In other words, he is a full manifestation of existence, knowledge, and bliss. In the material world, such a sense of existence, knowledge, and pleasure is meagerly exhibited. All living entities who are minute parts and parcels of the Lord are eligible to relish such consciousness of existence, knowledge, and bliss very minutely in the liberated stage, whereas in the conditioned stage of material existence, they can hardly appreciate what is the factual, existential, cognizable, and pure happiness of life. The liberated souls who exist in far greater numerical strength than the souls in the material world can factually experience the potency of the above-mentioned Sandini, Samvit, and Ladini energies of the Lord in the matter of deathlessness, fearlessness, and freedom from old age and disease.
In the material world, the planetary systems are arranged in 3 spheres called Triloka, or Swarga, Martya, and Patala. That's not right, is it? Is that what yours says as well? Martya? Sorry. Swarga, Martya, and Patala. And all of them constitute only 1/4 of the total Sandini energy. Beyond that is the spiritual sky where the Vaikuntha planets exist beyond the coverings of 7 material strata. In none of the Triloka planetary systems can one experience the status of immortality, full knowledge, and full bliss. The upper 3 planetary systems are called Sattvika planets because they provide facilities for a long duration of life and relative freedom from disease and old age, as well as a sense of fearlessness. The great sages and saints are promoted beyond the heavenly planets to Maharloka, but that also is not the place of complete fearlessness, because at the end of 1 kalpa, the Maharloka is annihilated and the inhabitants have to transport themselves to still higher planets. Yet even on these planets, no one is immune to death. There may be a comparative extension of life, expansion of knowledge, and sense of full bliss, but factual deathlessness, fearlessness, and freedom from old age, diseases, etc., are possible only beyond the material spheres of the coverings of the material sky. Such things are situated on the head. Adaya Mordasu. What does that mean? Such things are situated on the head. I mean, I thought
From
it
the
was
verse,
yeah, but head of what?
exists beyond the material coverings. Because it says situated on the head, so being universal body, so Krishna's head is the topmost spiritual planets.
Yes, it is. Okay. Interesting.
Okay, text 20. The spiritual world, which consists of 3/4 of the Lord's energy, is situated beyond this material world, and it is especially meant for those who will never be reborn. Others who are attached to family life and who do not strictly follow celibacy vows must live within the 3 material worlds.
Here we are.
Oh, purport. The climax of the system of Varnashram Dham or Sanatan Dham is clearly expressed here in this particular verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. The highest benefit that can be awarded to a human being is to train him to be detached from sex life, particularly because it is only due to sex indulgence that the conditioned life of material existence continues birth after birth. Human civilization in which there is no control of sex life is a 4th-class civilization, because in such an atmosphere there is no liberation of the soul encaged in the material body. Birth, death, old age, and disease are related to the material body, and they have nothing to do with the spirit soul. But as long as the bodily attachment for sensual enjoyment is encouraged, the individual spirit soul is forced to continue the repetition of birth and death on account of the material body, which is compared to garments subjected to the laws of deterioration.
In order to award the highest benefit of human life, the Varnashram system trains the follower to adopt the vow of celibacy, beginning from the order of brahmachari. The brahmachari life is for students who are educated to follow strictly the vow of celibacy. Youngsters who have had no taste of sex life can easily follow the vow of celibacy, and once fixed in the principle of such a life, one can very easily continue to the highest perfectional stage, attaining the kingdom of three-fourths energy of the Lord. It is already explained that in the cosmos of three-fourths energy of the Lord, there is neither death nor fear, and one is full of blissful life of happiness and knowledge. A householder attached to family life can easily give up such a life of sex indulgence if he has been trained in the principles of the life of a brahmachari. A householder is recommended to quit home at the end of 50 years. Panchasurdavyam vanam vrajet, and live a life in the forest. Then, being fully detached from family affection, he may accept the order of renunciation as a sannyasi, fully engaged in the service of the Lord. Any form of religious principles in which the followers are trained to pursue the vow of celibacy is good for the human being, because only those who are trained in that way can end the miserable life of material existence. The principles of nirvana, as recommended by Lord Buddha, are also meant for ending the miserable life of material existence, and this process in the highest degree is recommended here in Srimad Bhagavatam, with clear perception of ideal perfection, although basically there is no difference between the process of Buddhists, Shankarites, and Vaishnavites. Interesting. For promotion to the highest status of perfection, namely freedom from birth and death, anxiety and fearfulness, not one of these processes allows the follower to break the vow of celibacy. So they're all the same because of the principle of celibacy. Interesting.
The householders and persons who have deliberately broken the vow of celibacy cannot enter into the kingdom of deathlessness. The pious householders, or the fallen yogis, or the fallen transcendentalists can be promoted to the higher planets within the material world, 1/4 the energy of the Lord, but they will fail to enter into the kingdom of deathlessness. Abrihadvratas are those who have broken the vow of celibacy. The Vanapras, or those retired from family life, and the sannyasis, or the renounced persons, cannot break the vow of celibacy if they want success in the process. The brahmacharis, Vanapras, and sannyasis do not intend to take rebirth, aparaja, nor are they meant for secretly indulging in sex life. Such a fall down by the spiritualist may be compensated by another chance for human life in good families of learned brahmanas or of rich merchants for another term of elevation. But the best thing is to attain the highest perfection of deathlessness as soon as the human form of life is attained. Otherwise, the whole policy of human life will prove to be a total failure. Lord Chaitanya was very strict in advising his followers in this matter of celibacy. One of his personal attendants, Chota Haridas, was severely punished by Lord Chaitanya because of his failure to observe the vow of celibacy. For a transcendentalist, therefore, who at all wants to be promoted to the kingdom beyond material miseries, it is worse than suicide to deliberately indulge in sex life, especially in the renounced order of life. Sex life in the renounced order of life is the most perverted form of religious life, and such a misguided person can only be saved if, by chance, he meets a pure devotee.
Interesting. So I think we can conclude there.
Okay.
Yeah. Powerful purport. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, abstention is the key. There you go. It's not always wanted, especially these days. So, we have this Srimad Bhagavatam. If anyone's interested, now you can read it properly. We finally figured out how to turn the camera around so you can read the writing. All right, thank you all very much for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time. Remember, there is a book distribution marathon. If you'd like to sponsor some Bhagavad Gitas, if you'd like any books, any sets, any copies of the Srimad Bhagavatam, anything to do with Srila Prabhupada's books, please let us know, and we will be happy to try and serve and assist you in some way.
Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you very much.
Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.